And the first thing I'd like to discuss is what's currently on the surface, what's now in absolutely all Telegram channels, news agencies. These are the events happening in the United States. This includes everything from the conflict between Musk and Trump to the protests that have started across the entire country throughout the United States. At first, all of this happened on the West Coast and then it spread to the East Coast. So to speak, the migration policy and the raids that were sanctioned by the President of the United States forced people to take to the streets, and then by Trump's decision, the National Guard was also deployed to the streets. We will be talking about all of this today with journalists and international observers. Alexei Peche will be joining us.
Hello, Alexei. Hello, Yevgeny. Hello, viewers.
Hello, Alexei. Let's get straight to the pressing topics. To start with, I hope you can explain to us in very simple terms what is happening between the two most talked about people in the United States right now. This is the conflict between Musk and Trump, their public dispute on the social network that actually belongs to Musk. It's a series of mutual accusations and threats. Trump is threatening Musk to cut government purchases and funding for electric vehicles, as well as to reduce subsidies for development. Musk, on the other hand, can't make any financial threats against Trump, except for saying that there were some files with Epstein. And all of this reeks of scandals, some of them quite intimate, including the possibility of impeachment for Trump. What is this conflict about? Why is it needed? And what could be the consequences?
You know, you've touched on a very important aspect of this conflict. You said that Elon Musk doesn't have any financial leverage with which he could put pressure on the American president, Donald Trump. That's not quite true. But let's try to sort everything out here, as they say, and put everything on the shelves. The reason for the conflict actually lies both in the business sphere and in the political sphere. Because on the one hand, Donald Trump doesn't just say that for no reason. But what if we go ahead and cut government contracts for companies, for Elon Musk? And even then, let's see what he has to say. That's one side of the coin, but on the other hand, actually, the whole conflict started from the moment when, at the end of May, or even at the beginning of May, Elon Musk started to criticize that very big, beautiful bill by Donald Trump, which, as it's called inside America, is such a bill about the agenda because there's a whole mix of everything in it. Initially, it was aimed at actually reducing the United States federal budget deficit. And basically, it was on this wave that Donald Trump partly won the elections in November 2024, saying that he would reduce government spending. The budget deficit would decrease significantly and maybe even go down to zero. And Americans believed in this, and partly Elon Musk also believed in it, that it would be possible with the help of the Department of Management Efficiency to also reduce government spending. And then with the help of such a large financial and economic reform to completely reshape the federal budget of the United States of America and truly steer the United States economy in the right direction. This is what we see publicly and what we hear from the mouth of Trump as such a prominent populist. The American public believed this could provide economic incentives and make everything work. But when the first details of this big, beautiful bill started to emerge, it became clear that there was no talk of any budget savings there. On the contrary, it turns out that over the next couple of years, the national debt of the United States of America will increase, the budget deficit will grow by modest estimates by $2 to $2.5 trillion. And of course, Elon Musk starts to latch onto these numbers and says, listen, you all, what is meant is that Trump and his circle talked about the need to reduce the budget deficit, but you, on the contrary, are increasing it. Like, that's a bad move. If you look at Elon Musk's posts in the last few days, he has very often reposted some of Donald Trump's posts. Some of them are, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old. Post by Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, which said that the budget deficit needs to be reduced. And Elon Musk says, but what are you doing? And actually, it all looks like Elon Musk is such a fighter for public interest that he doesn't want the budget deficit to increase. But everything is very banal. Everything is very simple. The bill clearly states that there are greater preferences for those who extract gas and oil for industrialists. For huge American companies, there are tax cuts for large corporations that are somehow involved in this big business. But there are no benefits, no subsidies, no preferences for electric car manufacturers. And in general, this bill has a clearly stated provision that says funding for so-called green energy needs to be reduced. All articles related to environmental protection need to be reduced, and the whole story with green energy needs to be cut back. Accordingly, this directly affects Elon Musk. It directly impacts his Tesla business. And so he starts openly saying, so where are my promised preferences? I invested very seriously in Donald Trump's election campaign. I lobbied for his initiatives, and I expected, some kind of return in the end, that I would get something out of it. Because, by the most modest estimates, Musk invested more than $200 million in Trump's election campaign alone. This doesn't include the expenses for separate funds that support the Republican Party. That is, he invested a lot of money, he invested his reputation, and he expected that in the new, big, beautiful bill, there would be a lot of preferences for him. For the electric car manufacturer, that there would be some new contracts, for example, for the company, that money would be invested there. But it turned out that no money is being invested there. Money is being invested in big corporations, money is being invested in defense, money is being invested in border protection, and he is left with nothing. And if you pay attention, Trump also paid attention to this. He says Musk is offended that we just cut him off. Subsidies for electric cars are one factor. Elon Musk might be offended because he's not getting what he wanted. And then the political component comes into play. And I will return to what I started with when I said that Elon Musk can financially influence Donald Trump. The thing is, now, the latest statement from Donald Trump sounded approximately, I don't remember the exact words, but something like this. If Elon Musk suddenly decides to help the Democrats, then he will kind of pay for it. And here is an interesting point. The thing is, before this scandal, Elon Musk publicly promised that he would invest $100 million in various funds supporting the Republican Party. So they have a rather complicated system there, where in America it's basically allowed, it's absolutely legal if some businessman can invest money in this or that political candidate. It's absolutely legal. The only thing is, you can't transfer money directly. They go through special funds that support the Republican Party and so on. Elon Musk pledges to contribute $100 million to these funds. In 26, the next United States congressional midterm elections will take place. All of America is preparing for this event. He promises 100 million for the Republican Party, but now he's hinting that the funds won't be available. He declares that he's finished and unwilling to continue financing the machine. And now there's already insider information that he's basically ready to finance the Democrats to some extent. And here, many forget that in 2020, during the regular midterm elections to Congress, he financed the Democrats. He supported the Democrats. And in 2010, he supported the Democrat Barack Obama. So for Elon Musk, supporting the Democrats is nothing new. And here there's also the story where his business interests didn't work out. Excuse my language, but Trump dumped him, as Elon Musk might think now. So why not support the opponents? Not because he suddenly changed his ideological views or became fond of the Democrats, but because this way he can really dampen this Make America Great Again wave. And to show not to Trump, but to the Republican Party that he has influence, that his money can affect political processes. And in 26, it might happen that if he invests in the Democrats will take the majority in the House of Representatives and possibly in the Senate. And then Donald Trump's power will be very limited, because right now Trump can carry out because he has a one-vote majority in the House of Representatives and a majority in the Senate. Basically, there's no problem. The Republican Party is absolutely loyal to Donald Trump. He can push through any initiatives. That's the case right now, but in 26, everything could change dramatically. And Trump understands perfectly well that Elon Musk not only has money, but he also has political ambitions. And he really can do it. If the Democrats, for example, promise him that they will return to the topic of green energy, that they will bring back benefits and subsidies for electric vehicles, they can offer him some political position in the future politics of the United States of America. Because Elon Musk is not going to leave politics. That's already obvious. He's already hinting that he wants to secure a place in it. He wants to stay in it. Yes, in terms of influence, as Trump says, the cards are in his hands. But when it comes to money, the cards are in Elon Musk's hands. Because Trump, of course, also has money, but as a public official, Trump can't use it the way Elon Musk can. And Elon Musk is now trying to hurt Trump as much as possible with this sex scandal connected to Epstein. That's one aspect, but I think it won't develop at all. Absolutely. That was just a jab. And here was another jab when Elon Musk published a video at the beginning of this year. Remember when Donald Trump was promoting Tesla cars on the lawn in front of the White House? And he published this video and wrote, Trump, do you remember this? And this isn't just a jab. In fact, it's not even a conflict of interest. It's actually a crime. Because a government official, the president, in fact, was lobbying for and promoting a private entrepreneur, if you take American laws. He was advertising a private business on the grounds of the White House. That's absolutely not allowed. You can't do it. Elon Musk reminds him, like, remember, I asked you, you helped me, hinting that I know a lot more things that I could remind you about. That's why the way out of this situation could be, well, literally, I see two scenarios. It's either, let's say, three, because there's also one fantastic scenario. I don't really believe in it, but still three. And the first scenario is that Elon Musk goes all the way and actually starts working with the Democrats. And in this way, he breaks the whole scheme for Donald Trump for the next few years of the presidency. Or they have a meeting now and they come to an agreement which is somehow miraculous. In Donald Trump's bill, there will be a clause stating that electric cars and green energy are okay. It still requires subsidies and benefits. Or there is a third scenario that is being discussed now, which is the creation of Elon Musk's party, as he called it, the Party of America. But this story won't work, because the very history of the United States of America shows that third parties do appear there, but they don't survive. That is, it's already so conservatively complicated that there are Republicans and there are Democrats. You remember, different third parties have appeared, but they have never taken any seats in Congress at all. Now, this won't work either. But you can also play with this, manipulate it, create a fake party, attract voters to it, and then simply redirect them to the Democrats. Why not?
Alexei, thanks for explaining this story so clearly and thoroughly. You just gave three possible options, one of which is fantastic. I'll ask you a question that has been coming up a lot lately on different social networks. This fourth option could be no less fantastic. Will Volodymyr Zelensky be able to bring Trump and Musk to the negotiating table and resolve this conflict in 2 weeks?
Well, that sounds like a joke. Maybe even in 24 hours. Yes, let's leave it at that. If Elon Musk comes in a suit, probably, yes. Okay, yes.
Thank you. Let's wait and see how it all unfolds. I have another question about what's happening in the United States of America. It's not just between two people. Actually, it's in the networks, in social media, and in words, and also because of what's happening on the streets of American cities. Because, well, as far as I understand it, maybe you can somehow explain to us the migration policy that Trump announced. And these raids on the West Coast searching for illegals led to people first coming out onto the streets on the West Coast to protest against these crazy raids. When people are detained, expelled, or deported without proper investigation, and the National Guard was deployed to the streets of some cities against the will of the mayors of those cities. And a really serious, significant conflict is brewing with Trump and the representatives of the municipalities. Later, as sources in New York report, people also took to the streets and clashes with the police began there as well. What could this situation lead to? Because American cinema often tells us that it is exactly these kinds of events that start the division of the states in half, West against East, South against North. Once again, What do you think this will lead to, and what will be the consequences of such actions by the United States military and law enforcement?
You know, today I specifically followed the statement closely. I focus not on events themselves, but on statements made by politicians, activists, and public figures. Because the truth is hidden behind words, at least that's how it seems to me, though I could be wrong. But today it was clear once again that this is, after all, a political struggle between Republicans and Democrats. I'll explain why now. The thing is, the governor of California, where all this started, where Los Angeles and Compton, which you're showing right now, are located, he's a Democrat. Moreover, the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, is also a Democrat. So they're both Democrats, and now the White House is trying in every possible way to show that Democrats can't handle what's happening on the streets. Let me remind you that today is Sunday, and all these protests in Los Angeles, where it all started, began on Friday. On Friday, the first day of protests, everything was quite peaceful and calm. And even the governor of California, he came out and said that everything was fine, everything was calm. And then, for some reason, the White House decided that it was necessary to send the National Guard so that the National Guard, which is still subordinate to the federal government, would restore order. And the same governor of California, as well as the mayor of Los Angeles, both said in unison that there was no need to send any National Guard. The local law enforcement agencies of the state were absolutely handling the situation. There was no need for the National Guard, security forces, or even the army, as you rightly pointed out, to come in and restore order. Let's put that in quotes. That was unnecessary. But the rhetoric from the White House now sounds like the Democrats on the ground can't handle the situation. That's why intervention by the strong hand of Donald Trump, the strong hand of the White House, is needed to restore order there. And now let's try to imagine for a moment, let's exclude from this equation the National Guard and the statement by United States Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth that he's even ready to send in the Marines.
To send them there.
Would we have seen news about these protests on this scale worldwide or not? So on Friday, did you hear that protests were already happening there? No, of course we didn't hear about it. So basically, until those dramatic high-profile clashes happened, we hadn't heard any news about it. The protests are continuing. For example, on June 14th, they're planning to hold them again all across America. The protest movement that already existed
in the past
continued this year. That means this isn't something new. These protest movements against Donald Trump's policies happen constantly. They happen all over America, as Americans say, on the streets and on the doorsteps of every government institution. That means this has been going on for a long time. Yes, right now, this was really provoked by President Trump's administration because today the mayor of Los Angeles, Bass, she directly stated that even before this, immigration agents were coming, and even before this, they were detaining illegal migrants. But what happened this week was a scene where agents burst in large numbers. For example, 10 agents would come in for a single illegal immigrant. That is, it's unclear why this was necessary when the arrests were made as a show right on the streets so that everyone could see it. That is, they were creating a picture of chaos in which the Democratic administration of the state is not coping with
the situation. And
the White House comes in, sends the National Guard, and that's it. The situation is resolved. And today there was such a funny incident there. This morning when Donald Trump wrote on about how he saw that the National Guard handled the situation well, he wrote, "Thank you to the National Guard for restoring order in Los Angeles." The awkward part was that at the time of writing this post, the National Guard had not yet entered Los Angeles. And all the footage from there was footage of the local police dealing with the protests in the street. Well, basically, it's all just a demonstrative play to show that the Democrats can't handle it, but we can. Remember, New York also has a Democratic government. I wouldn't be surprised if the same story repeats there. And there will be statements from Caroline Leavitt, for example, the White House press secretary, who will say, see, we literally came in and put things in order within a day. If it weren't for the National Guard, there would be complete chaos there.
Oh, Alexei, as you were speaking just now, I was having flashbacks to 2020 in Belarus, in the capital, when peaceful rallies and protests were starting. Well, there was a lot of information in local chats, but overall there was nothing in the news around the world. In Belarus, people were requesting voting protocols. When the crackdowns began, protests erupted. Basically, the undemocratic government wanted to show that there would be no democracy in Belarus. The story is just that similar. I wouldn't be surprised if sometime soon Lukashenko, in another outburst, claims that I was the one who taught him this. That could be another question. I'll ask you to be brief. We're expecting the next speaker just somehow explain what's happening. Today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the United States transferred 20,000 missiles to the Middle East. These missiles were intended for Ukraine. We had negotiated about them with Biden. This information appeared on Ukrainian Telegram channels. What kind of trick is this? What kind of move is this from the White House administration?
If I'm not mistaken, this is the story about the removal of ammunition from Pentagon warehouses. There are two different models for receiving military aid from the United States. This is when contracts are signed with weapons manufacturers, and then
We wait.
for some period of time, while the manufacturer produces it and delivers it directly to Ukraine, this is when the United States government signs contracts, pays for these weapons, but the manufacturer produces them directly for Ukraine. There is a second way of providing military aid, which is more urgent, when weapons are taken from Pentagon stockpiles and immediately transferred to Ukraine, and then the United States government signs contracts and manufacturers replenish these stocks. And unfortunately, in the case when ammunition is taken specifically from Pentagon stockpiles, redirection is indeed possible. That is, there is no clear contract here, no clearly defined procedure by which these weapons are definitely transferred to Ukraine. It can end up in Europe at so-called distribution hubs, and from there it can be redirected either to Ukraine or not to Ukraine. As we can see, unfortunately, in this case, it's not to Ukraine, and Trump can pull this off. This is not the first time. So if this happened with these shells, then before that there was again news and a statement that the Pentagon decided on the anti-drone system, which was being developed by American military together with contractors. For Ukraine, they made a decision, but when it was developed, they decided that there was no need to transfer it to Ukraine, let it remain for the United States Army. That's why this is probably one of the first major episodes where we see that Trump is not just refusing to provide new military aid, not just refusing to lobby for or promote the idea of new aid packages, but is also starting to roll back the old ones. This is a bad signal for us because many experts, military experts, have said that even the military aid packages that were already contracted under the Biden administration would only last for about half a year. We'll keep fighting, everything will be okay. Now we see a different picture, and this is a worrying signal. You know, sometimes the Ukrainian audience there can often criticize me for presenting the news in a negative light, as they say. But this is a bad signal because we see that yesterday Donald Trump, I don't think it was a slip of the tongue, when he said that he could put sanctions pressure on both sides. Donald Trump is absolutely confident when he says that Zelensky and Putin are like children in a sandbox. He is absolutely sure that we are in equal positions. It's not an aggressor and a victim, but just, as he says, two children who met in a sandbox and simply can't share something. It sounds terrible because this is an American president who is convinced that there is no difference between the victim and the aggressor. Now you can sit down and negotiate about something. And if he sends 20,000 of these shells and sends them to the Middle East, it shows that this is not a priority for him. Now that means he doesn't see it as a priority for Ukraine to win this war. Trump with his statements. Basically, he is taking away from Ukraine its most important right, the right to self-defense. When he says that we are in equal positions, he is taking away the right that the victim has, which is self-defense. Unfortunately, right now, we really see a situation where Trump is turning away from Ukraine. You see how he dodges the issue of sanctions against the Russian Federation. How many times has he already repeated about 2 weeks, saying, I'll see another 2 weeks. And if Putin suddenly shows me that he doesn't want peace, then there will definitely be sanctions. And now I'll tell you that in the United States Congress, they are discussing the issue of that so-called hellish sanctions package, as Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal call it, where there is a 500% tariff on those countries.
that will
continue to buy Russian oil, gas, uranium, and so on. It will be modified. And there will literally be two amendments introduced. One is that possibly the duty percentage will change, and the second is this very key point. Always pay attention to these details. The second amendment will be that the word must, there will be
should be replaced
with may. That is, when it is written that if a country buys energy resources from Russia, a 500% tariff should be imposed on it.
Then the president,
the United States president, signs it, putting everything into effect. It will be replaced with may be introduced, allowing the United States president to say it may or may not be introduced. That's how it's known.
That's the story with Trump. Maybe yes, maybe no. Everything is up in the air. Alexei, thank you for taking the time to be with us today and explaining everything perfectly. We appreciate you giving your attention to Malanko Media. We will keep in touch in the future. Glory to Ukraine. Have a good day.
Glory to the heroes. Thank you.